Okay, I'm in Xuanzang Memorial Center, which is very close to Nalanda University. Now, Nangchong, also known as Huang Tasang, is one of the major explorers of all time. He came from China I think, about 7th century. He was here for 17 years. This is during the time of Tang Dynasty, one of the great dynasties in Chinese ancient history. So we'll just go here and try to capture what. So the great part about uh, uh, Zhong Huang was that he was not the first Chinese to ever come to India. There were a lot of people who had come before. There were not a lot of people, but they were people, travelers who had come before. But he was the most influential in the sense he stayed for 17 years. He is considered, he carried one of the greatest reports or the great Indian history. He had actually come initially to understand Buddhism. At that point of time, China had a part of Buddhism which he was not very happy with, which was incomplete, and he had come to India to understand what sort of influence or what were the true teachings of Buddha. However, however, Zhong Huang is not limited to the teachings of Buddha. He came here, he stayed for 17 years, he learned all type of ancient science in India. At that time, Nalanda University was anyway on a decline. By the time Xuanzang had reached India, Buddhism was totally on a decline, but the Buddhist practices which were happening in India were not in line with what actually Buddha had preached during his time, and he was there in India. And but the great part of Xuanzang is that he wrote what he saw, and his treaty, his one of the greatest statements which you can find anywhere in the world. He gives a very true picture of what was at that point of time happening. So in the sense, he gave a picture what he was told, what he saw, and he did not mix any of his own interpretations. So it was very influential at that point of time. Now, so as you see, this is a huge complex, which not he's highly respected in the sense he was a Chinese hero. When he came back, the Tang Emperor treated him. It was so difficult to come at that point of time from China to India. It was such a long road, known as a Silk Route. It was you had to go through. There were a lot of people who tried it before coming, and a lot of people died. A lot of people were not able to reach. But the great part is, Zhang Huang not only reached, he did so good for Indian culture. He took the best. He came out. He was actually a very tall guy. He was about 6 feet tall, just about a little bit under 6 feet. He was supposedly, in the description of a lot of people, fantastically handsome. He had a very strong Confucian influence in him, which was very strong in China. So he brought in that influence in India. It's very sad that we didn't learn much there, but that is something we can work on. So now here you see is the main which we'll say is the architecture, very typical of the Chinese architecture which they have built here. What is very interesting is China and India is actually making one of the first movies, and they are making a movie on Zhong Huang. So this is something very interesting. This I did not know, and I was trying to Wikipedia him. I'm writing a bit about him in my new coming book. So I'll be writing about uh, about uh, about him. He's actually one of the most highly revered persons, and I presently feel that among the explorers, he has the highest influence in the world of somebody who came, who made a difference. So we'll just look at the paintings here. This depicts actually the ancient Chinese art. But this is very fascinating. You look at what were the sort of the architecture at that point of time. What was the socio political system in China? So India got a very good glimpse. And what is very sad is that we did not make use of it. I mean, China and India had one of the oldest relations. If you ever go in history, no civilization has any relationship which is older than India and China. The two are the most fascinating countries in terms of culture, in terms of the depth of civilization which they have. They have been here for years. They both like Chinese civilization could be about 8,000 years. India and China would be roughly around the same. You could argue which of them is more ancient. It's very difficult to, sort of comment. But we'll come to that later on in the book. So this is a beautiful painting. This is what I want you to see. And so if you realize what Xuanzang did, you realize that maybe he was in a way much more successful than Columbus. He was much more influenced than Marco Polo. So this is something which we are not taught much in India. We are not, the Chinese influence has sort of not been told to an extent, not been elaborated in our history books. It's of course the reason being that we were under British rule for a very long period of time, and that is one of the reasons I think very likely that the Chinese influence or the Indian influence, the influence which made on China, has been missing. And this I feel is something which we need to look at. We need to look how over the years China and India have evolved and how much both Chinese and Indian influence had on each other. So there are a lot of influence which India made due to Buddha's teaching, which went away, and also due to Chinese art, the Indian art. This is what Xuanzang, when he took back, he took a lot of rich knowledge, which we'll discover now. But what you have to realize is also that we are not aware how much influence did Chinese civilization had on India, which is not elaborate, which we do not know, which is very sad. So we need to look at it, because China had Confucius, had Laozi, they had a very old culture. We'll look in the book how a lot of how the whole Shaolin temple concept came out. So there'll be a lot of discussion in my book. But what is the great part is, it's like you look the cleanliness. Wherever I've gone to China, wherever I've gone around, on my spiritual sabbatical or when I was